Welcome to the DNA Talks podcast, where we take on the mission of unlocking the code of your genetics. This season is all about you, upgrading your health, not just on the surface, but down to the root cause. Join us as your clinicians of the DNA company investigate your DNA and beyond. The intention of this podcast is to enhance your lifestyle by changing what is within your control. This does not substitute the medical advice given by your personal doctor, therapist, or other healthcare professional.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the DNA Talks podcast. My name is Dr. Lara Varden. I'm Dean of the DNA University and an in-house clinician here at the DNA Company. And we have a special episode today because this is a part 2 of my interview with Dr. Jacob Liberman. We had such an incredible conversation in part 1. To just give you a little bit of an overview of what we had talked about. First of all, Dr. Liberman, he is a doctor, a scientist, a pioneer in the fields of light, vision, and consciousness. He's written several books. His latest one, Luminous Life, How the Science of Light Unlocks the Art of Living, a book that I re-listened to over the weekend to become, to bring closer to my awareness and just the information that I wanted to touch upon more so in this episode. So in our part 1, we actually spoke about the beginning of light, how our bodies, how we are born with no preferences, how light literally becomes the solidification of that we see and experience around us. We talked about how the mind, how we are conditioned, how we are programmed in this life, in this society, in the world. We talked about shutting down the noise, how to quiet ourselves, how to hear, and how to allow the inspiration to guide us, how to improve our vision and awareness, literally our vision, but also our vision in the things of how we see and perceive things, perceive life. He shared with us beautiful stories of patients of his mother, of how inspiration has interwove his life and the lives of those around him and the awareness of that. And we wrapped up the last episode, part 1, about light and color, how that discovery of how light, that the beautiful colors, how they interact into how people perceive them, into their emotions, and how that can be healed, those traumas and their vision, and how beautifully interconnected they are. And again, that seems like we covered so much and we barely scratched the surface. So that's why we are doing this part 2. So thank you so much for making yourself available, Dr. Liberman, to be able to continue this conversation and dive even deeper and answer some of the questions that I had and gave teasers to at the end of part 1, which, by the way, if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, I really encourage you to pause this episode, go to part 1, listen and enjoy, and come and then revisit and listen this episode. So welcome, Dr. Liberman.
Welcome, Dr. Varden. I wouldn't be anywhere else but right here, right now.
That is so
it's a
sweet.
blessing.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I really appreciate that. And, so a couple of the things that I was mentioning at the end of our last episode, we were talking about light and healing and the different colors and the capacity of healing, different frequencies, how you gave a bit of information on how that works into consciousness. And I wanted to dive into that a little deeper, unpack that, as far as one of the things that you had talked about in your book, which I would like you to speak into as we unpack this, is the connection of spirit, breath, and light, and how these different colors and frequencies, how that works. Maybe speaking about some of the mechanisms of action, or what your perception is on how all this works, so people can kind of wrap their heads around it a little bit more.
Yeah. First of all, I don't know if anyone knows how this works. So let me begin with that. I'm reminded that at the end of Einstein's life, he said he'd spent his life trying to discover the secret of light, and he didn't feel that he'd made much movement forward in that. I mentioned before that the Bible speaks of God, whatever the creative forces, as light, and consciousness equates, spiritualists equate consciousness with light, and physicists speak of light as the fundamental energy from where life emerges. And so we're really at that core question: where does all this come from, and so on? And my sense is that the human mind doesn't have the capacity to see into those realms. We have ideas, we have thoughts and theories, and so on, but science is continually evolving, which essentially means that what we used to think was truth, we now realize we've made a new discovery and say, oh no, it doesn't actually work that way, it works this way. And so I'm not sure that science provides us truth. Perhaps the process, the scientific method, is continually cutting the distance to the goalpost in half. We keep getting closer. The question is, do we ever arrive? I'm not sure about that answer.
Well, honestly, I think it's really in the journey. It's
Yes,
I don't think it's the destination. It truly is the journey and all of the experiences we have within that journey that
right,
enriches us as we reach that destination, which I think would really be the end of this particular life we are existing in. Because when you reach that destination, then what more is there to do? I mean,
right.
besides moving on. So the enriched aspect is all in the journey.
It's interesting because I'll be 78 in November. So I'm in the fourth quarter, the quarter of acceptance,
Mhm.
that things are as they are. And the idea that there's a secret or something, that once you have that, everything is perfect. You get whatever you want. There's no more relational issues. Don't No more concerns about money, no more broken hearts. And then of course you keep living and you realize that part of our makeup is that we are impacted by all these things. It's natural, and we do feel, and animals feel the same thing as well. So, all I can share with you is what I have seen with my physical eyes and with whatever that is inside of us. I call it seeing through the eyes of God. Whatever that is within us that senses something, even though we don't know what the source of that seeing is all about. Color is a very fascinating aspect of this. I started noticing in my very early uses of color is that when children came into my practice, because initially I did a lot of work with kids, and many of them had some sort of identified learning and reading and attentional type issues. And what I routinely noticed is I would check their field of vision, which is how large was their expanse of vision. And what these children demonstrated to me is that most of them had significantly reduced field of vision. Rather than seeing life as a whole, they were perceiving life through a hole. Many of them, their field of vision was a few degrees. I mean, really like tunnel vision. But there was no pathology. This change in the field of vision wasn't because of some pathological condition occurring in their life. It was there because they weren't able to receive some portions of the light spectrum. And I remember utilizing different wavelengths of light, different colors of light is the way most people would experience it, and having them look at these colors for maybe 20 minutes a day for 15, 20 days. And within a week of beginning, I would check their field of vision, and it might be 5 times larger. In fact, my PhD thesis, which was published, spoke about doing this and how the light treatments affected their cognitive ability, their field of vision, how much they remembered of what they saw, how much they remembered of what they heard. And it was fascinating because the average individual's field of vision sometimes expanded by thousands of percent. Now, when you look at life, your field of vision includes what you previously saw, what you're experiencing in this moment, and where you might go to next, because the field of vision is what's initially picking up something that's calling to you. And so expanding the field of vision expands how much one is aware of. It's the physical representation of one's field of awareness. The more we are aware of, the more there is for us to notice in terms of what possibilities exist. And the more sensitive that field of vision is, the more acute is our intuition, because the peripheral field of vision is primarily photoreceptors called rods, which, as I mentioned last time we spoke, have the ability to detect and respond to a single photon of light. There is no technology that can do that. So it means we are designed to be able to detect and respond to things that are formless. It's not a cup, it's the energy that underlies the creation of this cup. Another way of saying that is it provides us an ability to see, not on a physical level that we are aware of, but
Mhm.
at an unconscious level where most everything is occurring. It allows us to see what is yet not visible. So when you think of individuals who we say are psychic, or they're awoken, or they have this skill, you're really speaking about individuals that are very in touch with that intuitive ability, which is the ability to see in a very different dimension than the ability to visually see. And
Mhm.
so, even though these are all parts of the same process, the eyes, there are parts that are seeing the physical reality that we have. And then there are aspects that make up even a larger part of our physiological makeup that are tuned into this invisible realm. And so, why this is so important is that the question of what's the mechanism of action and so on, it gets to the very deepest and deepest and deepest places that science is looking for. Why are
Mhm.
we here? What is our makeup? What is our purpose? And so on. So, what I began to notice from some of my early research and clinical work is that people seem to have a difference in receptivity to different portions of the light spectrum. Their body
Right.
was able to embrace a certain aspect of it and was a bit cautious about other parts of it. Now, when you look at that, you realize, well, that's the way we are with life. We are
That's right.
receptive to some parts and a little allergic to others. My dear friend Ramdas, before he passed away, he used to say, if you want to evaluate your level of awareness or how enlightened you are, go spend the weekend with your family because you then would often experience some of the aspects of your being that
Mhm.
only came up under certain circumstances.
Right.
What I notice with people is one, they had a difference in receptivity to different parts of the spectrum. And when their receptivity expanded so that they became
Mhm.
more comfortable with areas of the spectrum that used to feel uncomfortable, they noticed their life changed, their health
Yeah.
changed, and so on. And I didn't realize the significance of this until about 1991. My first book had just come out, and I was on a worldwide tour, speaking all over the world. And I was in Germany, and I was invited to go to the laboratory of Dr. Fritz Albert Popp up until the time he passed away. But he was the modern day father of biophoton research.
Mhm.
He was the one that determined that the body is continually making biophotons and that those biophotons are utilized as the primary cellular communication system where changes of light are going on inside. And so when I met with Pop for those couple days and he did readings on me in terms of biophotons emissions coming from my hands and so on. We did a lot of exciting stuff. But there was a point where we were having lunch and I shared with him what I'm just sharing with you. And he said, that's fascinating. And I'd never had a scientist of that caliber listen to that and say, that's fascinating. And I said, why do you say that? He said, well, I don't work with people in the way you work as a clinician, but I've done a lot of research on cells and how cells respond to light. And he said, I
Mhm.
noticed something interesting, and you're the only other person I've spoken to that had a similar experience, even though you were working with a system that had trillions of cells. He says, but I'm sure it's exactly the same thing. And I said, well, what did you notice? He said, when a cell is in an optimal state of wellness, it responds to all the different frequencies and wavelengths of light identically. It accepts them all.
Right.
But when a cell is out of balance, it responds selectively. It's comfortable with some wavelengths and moves away from others. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh my God,
Wow.
could this be some aspect of the new medicine? Could this be some
Right.
aspect of rather than looking at the human body as something we need to diagnose and label for treatment? Is it possible that we could begin looking at the human energy system in terms of its relationship with life, its ability to embrace some portions of life and be stressed out by others, because stress is so much involved in the creation of dis-ease and
Right.
disease. And so, is there a way that this could be an entirely new way of looking at the human energy system? So, that's what was happening for me early on. And many times in my life, I've connected with visionaries in the field of technology
Mhm.
and other areas, because my vision was to create a system where you would monitor the body's physiology at very whatever the state of the art was,
Mhm.
while the individual was viewing different colors introduced in a very gentle way, and noticing when the body said ouch to
Right.
whatever degree, and then utilizing that profile, if you will, that
Mhm.
receptivity profile, to begin to gently introduce tiny little micro doses of what used to create an allergic reaction, as allowing the system to gently become comfortable with what it used to be uncomfortable, desensitizing the emotional and somatic triggering that we have into something very different. And how would that impact our overall health and wellness?
And I love how you really dove into this so eloquently in your book, Luminous Life, and touched on it at the end of part 1 of our other episode.
Yeah.
But, it still it makes my brain beg the question, okay, so you do these gentle light therapies, with people who can see. What do you do for those who are blind, these children who may have been born blind and they don't recognize or comprehend possibly different colors, or those who may have had their sight but have now lost their sight? What do you do?
Great
How do you
question.
work with people like that?
First of all, most individuals that we say are blind have
Mhm.
light perception. They may not see form, but
Mhm.
there is light perception, which is critical because their whole circadian system is relying on the perception of light and different portions of the spectrum as it changes throughout the day and the night, for their physiologies to be in a state of harmony with Mother Nature. So, my sense is that people are not responding to the color they perceive, they're responding to the energetics that create what we perceive as a color. I'm not sure if colors actually exist in the external world, or if that is just a perceptual phenomenon that is created by the physical apparatus of sight and the brain, and this thing we call consciousness, that in some way takes a quantum soup and transforms it into something that looks like it has different colors in it. So, my sense has been for a long time that people are not actually responding to the perceived color, even though that can have some impact as well. My sense is that it is the energy that is creating resonance or dissonance within their system. When we eat food, we ingest it, digest it, assimilate it, and excrete it. Sometimes we eat something that we're not able to digest, we're not
Right.
able to assimilate. And so we have a tummy ache or some digestive issues, whatever. Most of our life is not the processing of food, it's processing the frequencies, the vibrations that comprise the experience we called life, which includes eating, but it includes sounds and sights and interactions and so on. And my sense is that most of our biology is regulated through our interactions. When
Mhm.
we feel in resonance with someone, something magnetically brings us together. Something unbeknownst to us merges us. It gives us the feeling we've known each other forever, even though we just met. And in
Right.
being with those people, we
Right.
actually come into a state of awakening. We forget the pain in our back that we had. We forget that we were concerned about having enough money. It's almost as though something is lifted to a new level of awareness where problems and solutions don't exist. And sometimes just short periods of time in that
Mhm.
state can really produce profound transformation without doing anything. It's almost like our system drops back to its default setting before all the conditioning was there. You know, they say love is blind. It could be that it blinds us from all the ideas, doesn't allow us to see through that mechanism where the conditioning is all stored. So, in relation to individuals who cannot see, it is very rare to find someone who doesn't have light perception. If they don't have light perception, they're going to have a
Mhm.
lot of issues because their body is not going to be regulated around the light and darkness of days. It's going to run on a different schedule. In fact, there were times, I don't think they do this much any longer, but when they imprisoned people who were violent or had done
Mhm.
terrible crimes, they would often isolate them. And
Right.
part of the isolation was not just being alone. Often they would leave them in darkness, in total darkness. And what would happen is they would not only suffer emotionally and physiologically, but their body just didn't know what to do and when to do it. It would lose its connection with the changes in
Mhm.
light that we all experience. So those individuals that are truly who do not have light perception, this approach may not be effective for them. Although I've never worked with an individual that didn't have light perception, so I'm not sure. But that's my intuitive sense. I have worked with people that have very limited sight and have found
Mhm.
that they respond, that they have a feeling sense of things, even though they may not have a visual recognition of it.
Mhm. Yeah, really connecting light and genetics, what we do here at the DNA company, looking at someone's genes and functional genomics. I mean, when you consider that light and different colors, these frequencies, because everything is frequencies, we
Right.
live in an electromagnetic world. Our thoughts are frequencies. And I always tell people where thoughts go, energy flows.
Yeah.
And the same thing, sound, light, everything is different frequencies. And that light really, it profoundly influences gene expression, especially genes involved in the circadian rhythm. When you're talking also about neural activity and cellular detoxification, you know really modulating how the body responds to
Right.
and uses the light is integral in the way that our bodies function, just like you were saying, as a form of, for these prisoners,
Yeah.
putting them in silence, in dark. Really, when we think about it, some of the main genes where light is serving as that cue for activating or suppressing the genes, particularly those, again, that deal with circadian rhythm, talking about like the clock gene,
Right.
the cry gene, the CRY1 gene, things in mood regulation like BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factor, the DRD2, which is the dopamine receptors, COMT, which helps for the clearance of these neurotransmitters. And I had mentioned about metabolic and detoxification pathways, like our glutathione conjugation pathway, even the antioxidation pathways. When we I mean, I know for in my practice and in biohacking and in other functional medicine recommendations, using light as therapy, things like blue light, for example, that can directly help to reset circadian rhythms,
Hmm.
that the genes that I had mentioned earlier. When we're talking about, say, red light therapy, really affecting the functionality and health of the mitochondria,
Right.
and all the downstream effects that mitochondria affects, which is basically everything.
Everything.
So, it's so important. I see how light can either benefit or be problematic.
Right.
Um, when we're talking about the timing of which. And I am so grateful to our common friend, Rudy Nasi from Viva Race, who brought us together. I'm
Yeah.
wearing the glasses right now because I am most of my day is staring at a screen that emits blue light.
Right.
And my work day extends beyond that of the regular sunlight. So in the evening, you know, having my body, my eyes, be exposed to this artificial light and being indoors and fluorescent lighting and all these different things
Right.
can throw that off. So we know how our bodies can experience disruption and dis-ease
Right.
with the maladaptation of different light frequencies at the incorrect time. So it only seems very natural and as an of course that certain light frequencies can also have those healing effects
Right.
and obviously influencing our genetic predispositions, or where we may be weak, where we may be strong, and then leveraging that. It was really interesting because when I was listening to the book again, one of the things that you had spoken about earlier was a self experiment that you had done for a week where you paid attention and uh, did the things that called your attention,
Right.
because that's a big thing that you have mentioned,
Right.
in our interview and of course in the book. And you did that for an entire week.
I've been
That
doing that
what
my entire life. I I I that is the way my life is directed.
Right. I think that's amazing. And you know where my brain went though?
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, okay, so I have clients, and I'm actually one of those people who has a genetic predisposition. And people will find this if they do have their DNA 360 results, it would be in the mood and behavior,
Yeah.
about the way that our body makes and transports serotonin. So serotonin, a lot of people think of, oh, the happiness molecule and everything else. Well, in a way, yes, but we also have to think of it a little more agnostic, in that it also helps us to regulate and prioritize incoming stimuli.
Mhm.
So the gene that I'm talking about is the 5-HTT-LPR gene in particular.
Mm.
And this gene helps with the transport of serotonin, that recycling of it.
Right.
And if someone is dysregulated, like me, okay, what ends up happening is that it takes more energy and really more focus to be able to prioritize the incoming stimuli. It's actually one of the genes that we look at that affect attention, that actually can be dysregulated, or that oftentimes is dysregulated for those who have been diagnosed with ADHD. And the thing that had my attention when you said that you did the things when you noticed it. That's what you did when you noticed it, and then you went and did that thing. I'm thinking to myself, I'd be bouncing all over the place because it's like everything can catch my attention.
Right.
For people who have that tendency where it's like squirrel, it's difficult for them to prioritize the incoming stimuli where they can't stay focused in a task for as long unless it's really uh, interesting to them, in which case they can get drawn in and stay focused for a period of time. But like a ticking of a clock or thinking of other things, it's like their mind is bouncing from thing to thing to thing, and it's just like, how do you
How do you work
reconcile
with that?
someone who has that? Exactly. How do you
Yeah.
work with that?
Yeah, so let's look at that in a few different ways. There's a difference between the guidance that comes to us versus the activity that is self-generated inside. So, how can I share this? You see, let's go back to conditioning. We've been conditioned to believe that that we're more evolved than all the other species and so on because we have the a mind, we have the ability to think and so on and so forth. We are so used to filtering everything coming in and everything going out through the conditioning of the mind, and there is so much that's coming in to that mind all the time that it's totally overwhelming. And so attentional difficulties are at an epidemic level, especially today with all of the technologies and so on. I suffered from that most of my early life. It didn't allow me to gain information from reading and made schoolwork very difficult. I discovered later that there are visual aspects that take place that optimize selectively one's ability to selectively attend to something and to actually suppress the noise of the other things. If you've ever studied meditation, which I'm sure you have, they have you your eyes are closed, but they have you focus on something. Watch your breath. Put the tongue on the roof of the mouth. Repeat this mantra. Because what happens with the eyes, the physical eyes, is the same whether the eyes are opened or closed. If your eyes are open and you're looking at me, your eyes converge onto me. And when they converge, they also focus. Those two movements are inseparable from one's ability to attend. There's the algorithm of the brain, which is picking up all this information all the time, is literally silenced when the eyes converge and accommodate or focus. And so whether you're meditating or in schoolwork, if you are not able to easily converge and accommodate your eyes, you're going to continually be hearing the peripheral noise overwhelming that which you're trying to attend to. So, when I was working with kids, aside from looking at their color preferences, I also looked at the posturing of their eyes because the eyes in a resting state have to be sitting at a certain position so that when something calls their attention, they can easily converge toward it. If the eyes are naturally in a slightly more externalized posture, it takes more effort to converge them. And most people, it takes so much energy to do that that they're they don't have the ability to do that for too long. You may be experiencing that. You may have been experiencing that much of your life. It may not be something to do, although the serotonin is impacted, it may be something just as simple as the positioning of the eyes and so on. So when I work with those individuals, I also notice that the different colors often expand the field of vision. And when the field of vision is expanded, it supports the function of binocular vision, which is the teaming of the two eyes. And so when that is supported, attention becomes much, much easier. There's an area in the vision care field called vision therapy or vision training. These are not eye exercises as most people think. They are tools that literally train your brain to work in a different way. It's brain training. And there is a technique called the Brock string. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but it's a technique where you have a string with a series of colored beads on it, and one end of the string is held underneath on your upper lip, and the other end is moving away from you. When you look at those beads, even though there's just one string, because you have two eyes, if you're using both eyes, you see what looks like two strings pointing right at the bead you're looking at. Now, you know you're looking at the red bead, but sometimes the two strings will appear to crisscross behind the bead or closer to you than the bead, which means the eyes are over converging, trying too hard, or under converging and don't have the stamina to easily work together as a team. And so, what's interesting is most people in the vision care field that practice vision training, they look at this as an exercise. You have to do it over and over and over again. I discovered something fascinating. Change doesn't happen because of repetition. Our whole concept is, oh, you want to change something, you have to do it for 20 days and X number, you have to say affirmations, you have to practice, and so on. I discovered that neuroplastic changes from my clinical experience are not primarily occurring because by repetition. Repetition can make changes in the neuroplasticity of our brain. But if doing something over and over again is what creates the change, doing something over and over again is what will be required to maintain it. You can go to the gym and develop big biceps by lifting weights, but stop lifting them and your biceps start to disappear. I'm not interested in that kind of change. I'm interested in change that occurs from the inside out, not by doing more, which is something we've all been conditioned to do. And so, what I discovered is that awareness is what's curative. So, when someone uses the Brock string, and all of a sudden, for the first time in their life, they can visually see where their eyes are pointing. They can simultaneously see where the eyes are pointing versus where the mind is looking. Are they the same place in the same time? Meaning you have a congruence and coherence on some level? Or are the eyes one place and the mind somewhere else? And seeing this has an incredible, it's like you have an moment. And all of a sudden, your system begins to rewire itself while you're in the midst of seeing this. And you can actually see visual function improving right in front of your eyes within sometimes seconds or a minute. So, in terms of your question, my feeling is that receptivity to most of the light spectrum should balance some of these aspects that you mentioned in terms of DNA expressions and so on. Vision training can also help. One of the things that I mention to people, if we don't have the right diet, we might suffer from malnutrition. If we don't have the right light diet, we suffer from what my old friend John Ott used to call malillumination, which huge impacts. So he noticed kids that were sitting in classrooms with artificial lighting, specifically cool white fluorescent tubes, which were very common at the time, not only had greater difficulty learning and were more hyperactive and more attentional difficulties, but significantly higher degree of cavities as a function of sitting under the wrong light. And when the lighting was changed without the knowledge of anyone in the classrooms, the changes became very obvious very quickly. So I share with people you need to get a minimum daily requirement of light, just like you would of any other nutrients you take. So I suggest to people take a small walk, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And while you're outside, try a technique called sunning, which you might be familiar with, where you just sit, you allow the light to come towards the eyes are closed. And as you just gently allow the body to expand and contract as it relates to the oxygen in the environment, you gently just move the head to the left, allowing the light to just sweep across. You do that 4 or 5 times. I also have them drop the head and move the head back to do it in this meridian as well. And what that does is it begins to re regulate the system in terms of its relationship to light, darkness, and different spectral characteristics. And so, yes, we've become an indoor culture. More than 90% of us spend our days indoors and frequently never see the light of day because maybe we go to work when it's still dark and park under the building and so on. So, I always found it interesting that if you stand by the entrance to a large building around lunchtime, which is when people begin to leave to go to lunch and so on, you listen carefully. So many of the people leaving the building will go a sigh of relief because they've been light deprived the entire morning. And so I remember doing some consulting work for the Four Seasons Resort on Maui years ago, and people were sitting in these cubicles in tiny spaces with terrible lighting and had all kinds of complaints. And I suggested to the supervisor, why not the last 5 minutes of every hour, people just step outside? Just step outside. They don't have to do anything. Just step outside. And I don't know whether they implemented it because, these kinds of things, they think, oh, no, that's not efficient, they're not going to work. But in reality, what happens is they become a lot more productive. Light awakens them and so on. And you mentioned, red light to jumpstart mitochondria and so on. Well, the eyes have the highest number of mitochondria of any part of the body. They live on light. They're married to the lighted environment. And so when you're out in the full spectrum of sunlight, which we've been told, oh, stay out of, you get the benefits of all of that in the appropriate balance. There's a huge amount of blue light in the solar spectrum and a huge amount of red light, but they balance each other beautifully. So all these technologies using red light therapy, they're all great things. However, we're trying to treat the symptoms rather than getting to the cause, which is we need to spend some amount of time outdoors each day so that our body's natural relationship with light, the lighted environment, is basically in place, to optimize our health and wellness. I've always spent a lot of time outdoors since I was a small boy. It just was natural for me. I've never used sunglasses in my life. I have nothing against sunglasses. Sunglasses are perfectly fine if you're flying a plane and it's going into the sun, or if you're driving your car at sunset or sunrise and it's shining into your eyes. The visor may not be enough. You might be able to be safer with a pair of sunglasses. That's what these things were designed for. They were designed as a tool that you utilized as needed, not as something you became addicted to because someone said to you, the sun is going to cause cataracts and skin cancers and all of that kind of stuff, when the truth might be that the lack of sun is actually what may be causing those aspects of health and so on. When you look at melanoma, most melanomas show up in parts of the body that never see the sun. So we have to incorporate some common sense into all of these things. And in certain cases, treatments like red light therapy and so on could be incredibly beneficial and are incredibly beneficial. I've been using what is now called photobiomodulation red light therapy for more than 20 years. Nobody was talking about it at that time. Well, I'm fortunate that I saw certain things, and it didn't, at that time I wasn't utilizing light emitting diodes. I was just taking red filters and having the person wear them for some period of time and notice certain conditions would improve, like macular degeneration, like retinitis pigmentosa, things that there was no treatment for. So these things were discovered just by experimentation with real people in real life experiences. And so often we are very focused on treatment and very not focused on just the natural things that naturally prevent many conditions from occurring. This is a very interesting area to look at. And I love the work you're involved in right now, looking at all of these things at a level of the DNA.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll tell you, it's really marrying the information um, of the research and knowledge that you have put forth, into public consumption to be able to have the understanding of genetics, of functional genomics. I mean, it's such a burgeoning field.
Right,
There is still, we have learned so much in just the last 15, 20 years
right.
since the genome was actually mapped, um, to where we are going. It is just moving, at such a high speed, so much information, and it is so exciting
Right.
to be able to decipher some of that and to be able to make it applicable in such a personalized way.
I love
But
that.
there's something
Yeah.
that I wanted to circle back around to, when we were talking about prisoners and a punishment in complete darkness and things like that. And yet nowadays, we are actually implementing a biohacking tool of deprivation tanks,
Right,
where you are in the salt water, where it's complete darkness, complete silence, and self-imposed almost imprisonment,
right,
in these types of conditions, but in a beneficial manner.
right.
So what are your thoughts on that, having that complete absence of any incoming stimuli obviously including light, not even a single photon.
A little taste of peace goes a very long way. And while we know we need the stimulation of lights and sound and many other things, when it's absent, you also get a chance to realize, wow, life is overwhelming. There's just so
It's very
much
noisy.
it's overwhelming. There's so much going on that in many ways interferes with you being able to tune in to really the essentials that are coming in all the time. And so when there's less for the mind to attend to, perhaps the volume level of the other information that's always there, but we're unaware of it because so much is covering it up. So my sense is that these experiences that you're speaking of really awaken us to a different level of awareness. It's always been there, but there is so much coming at us all the time. And with social media and all these kinds of things right now, we have no idea of the difference between fact and fiction. And we're bombarded with so much stuff, and we don't know what the origin is of so much of that stuff. And so I think these experiences are very expansive to our awareness. They maybe eliminate something that is there to an extreme degree for a short period of time, and all of a sudden you discover something in the midst of that that can potentially be hugely, hugely beneficial. So I'm not against anything. I think my sense is each of us responds differently to whatever it is that we're experiencing. And these are valuable experiences to have, to see how does it actually work. To give you an idea, most of us take some sort of supplements every day. And if you're in the healthcare field, you recommend these perhaps to patients as needed and so on. And before I recommend anything to anyone, I take it myself. I look at it, I see the research or whatever they say the research is, and it's supposed to do this and this and this and this, and it can show really highly significant improvements in certain areas. And so I like to work with my internist and consider her my partner, not my doctor, but my partner. And
Right.
so we do experiments together. Cholesterol is a little off. Let's see what happens if we take this. And what's fascinating is some things have very significant measurable effects.
Mhm.
Most things don't show me any change, anything of any significance, even though the research on it supposedly shows these very significant changes. And so, what may impact someone 100% of the time may impact another person 0% of the time. And
Right.
so it's very important for us to listen to everything, take advantage of everything that's available, and carefully experiment to find out what's the truth for you. What's the
Mhm.
truth for you? What's going to benefit you? And so I always, whenever I share things with individuals where I'm speaking or a podcast or whatever, it's only with the intent of learning something. How does my system respond to this? Whether it's a
Mhm.
person or a supplement or some form of treatment, and so on. And I think that's so important because we have a tendency to accept or reject based on what we think. And
Right.
life is not what we think. So it's very important that all of us be a scientist that utilizes our common sense and our inner guidance and some degree of our own exploration to see what actually occurs. And I remember my wife and we are interested in health. And my wife was also, we both enjoy cooking. And so she started concocting these muffins initially, which now have become bread. But it's a bread that has no grains in it, but it tastes like bread. But it has no,
What?
it's coconut flour, ground up golden flax seeds, some egg whites, psyllium, and a few other things. We love it. We bake 2 loaves every day or two. And what's fascinating is we started eating this bread. Neither one of us really was eating bread for the most part. We started
Mhm.
eating this bread, and when we next did our blood tests, the difference was huge. So huge were the changes in my cholesterol levels and in hers as well. But my doctor said, I don't think there's a drug that can do that. So, again, this is not about selling you on the idea of making your own bread and so on. This is about sharing that we do things by experimentation and we validated through blood panels and so on to see what really works in our particular system. And I think that stuff is really, really valuable.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, really, that's the basis of what we do here at the DNA company. It's,
Yeah,
we use someone's genes, their genomics, as that blueprint
beautiful.
as like a jumping off point
Right,
of information, and then use other tests that are more epigenetically driven, that do change, because obviously your genes don't change,
right,
but like our gut 360 premium, how's your gut biome?
right,
That is changeable. And so testing, not guessing, seeing, okay, where are the issues, looking at blood work, looking at all of these different types of markers, then doing exactly what you're saying.
yeah,
Let's try this, being informed of their genes, of more precision, rather than just kind of like going, hey, this sounds good, let's try this, let's try, throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what
right,
sticks. Being a little bit more precise based on the information. And then, okay, now let's follow up. How has this changed? What has changed? Have these markers gotten better? Has your symptoms gotten better? And that's exactly, I mean, that really is the scientific method as well.
oh yeah,
And I find
absolutely.
it so beautiful, and so so much more getting us out of that cookie cutter template
Right,
of treatments, and saying, you, Jacob, sitting in front of me, you are an individual. Let's treat you as such. That, just like you were saying, you give a medication or a
right,
supplement to someone, they will have profound differences in the usage of that. Or give the same thing to another person,
right,
doesn't do anything.
exactly.
So, and I love the fact of how we're all in this field, that we are pulling in these integrative practices,
Right,
that it's not just one modality, it's not just one thing, it is that combination of a holistic nature, because we are all connected.
yeah,
And I'll tell you, once again, I was just so profoundly inspired, moved, and continually educated by re-listening to your book, Luminous Life.
oh,
Um,
thank you.
I really encourage those, our audience, to take a look, to read your books. That first one, Light Medicine of the Future, just amazing. The one that I had read in the early mid 1990s, because actually I remember reading about what you had talked about light and school children, and how that change of getting them outside into real sunlight, that this interesting finding that
Right.
cavities down. I mean, it
Right.
was just like, how is that connected? But it's just amazing that the fact that it is, and it goes to show you how much we still don't truly know, how much everything is truly connected. And we
Everything
have
and
to
everyone
trust.
are
Yes,
continually not only
absolutely.
connected, but influencing each other
Yes.
through a variety of ways that we have yet to uncover, but thank God
Mhm.
are in the process of. And that's incredibly
Absolutely.
exciting. Incredibly
And
exciting.
you so beautifully penned that in your book,
Thank you.
Luminous Life. I'm just
Thank you.
such an inspiring.
You my second book, Take Off Your Glasses and See, before the launch of the book, it was sent out to, I don't know, many individuals to review it, maybe 50 people. And we had at least 40 individuals who reviewed it who came back all saying the same thing, which I thought was incredible. They said, my vision improved just reading the book. And
Wow,
what it
that's
confirmed
amazing.
to me, and this is why I feel like podcasts like we are doing today is so important, because when the words are funneling through us in the way that they are today, those words can have medicinal value.
The words
So,
themselves have frequencies,
oh,
healing.
absolutely. I always, when I was training doctors in the 80s, I would say, don't work with anyone you don't love. I said, because love is
Right.
the answer, regardless the question. And rather than thinking of them as a person who's sick or has some problem you need to fix, if you can see them as a whole person to begin with, something changes dramatically. I said, what I discovered is relationships only work, whether they be intimate relationships, professional relationships, doctor patient relationships, they only work if everybody's the same height. You know, if you have one that knows and one that doesn't, there's something about that that doesn't quite work fully. But I've always found myself unable to create some sort of boundary, if you will, between the people I have the pleasure of connecting with and my own life experience. I feel that one of the very best things that I can share with people is my humanity, is the fact that I have the same difficulties as they do. I don't have it all figured out. No one is going to avoid getting sick at some time or another. No one is going to avoid one day getting a diagnosis they didn't expect, or losing their money, or whatever it is. And one of the most powerful periods of my life, which was terrifying at the time, was dealing with panic attacks for years.
Mm.
And I look back now, and so much of what I became aware of was occurring at a time where I was questioning whether I was going to make it from day to day. And so the those difficult times of life, which all of us have been trained to try to change the subject of, are profoundly powerful, profoundly powerful. And we all deal with that all the time on one level or another.
Again, it's in the journey.
It's in the
And
journey.
it really is a beautiful journey with all its ups and downs, to be able to recognize and appreciate
Yeah,
the challenging times, because it's within those challenging times that we can truly cherish the more easy, wonderful times. So,
absolutely. The great way
and
is not
I
difficult
will
for those that have no preferences. Yeah.
yes, absolutely. And I will tell you, this has been one of those times that I truly cherish,
Oh,
that
me
have
too.
been so enlightening. And I appreciate you so much, for all that you have experienced and have turned around and shared with everyone listening today, in your books and in the thousands of talks that you have given, and all of those people that you have impacted. I
Thank you
want to
so
say
much.
thank you. Thank you for
The
being here.
feeling is
Thank you for
so mutual. I'm excited by everything you're involved in, everything you're looking at, and that will allow you to put the puzzle pieces together. Aha! And all of a sudden we see what's there and our eyes light up. So I send you all my love and good wishes. I'm so grateful for this time together with you and Scotty.
Well, thank you. Much appreciated. I will send that information and thanks to him as well.
Yeah,
So I wanted to say that, well, I will be in touch. I know we could talk for several more hours, and I want to say thank you to our audience, and I hope that they have enjoyed this part two, very informative. And I really, again, I stress it, the ROI on you, our audience, reading his books, totally worth it. Any bit of insight, I can guarantee you, you will go away from those books gathering information and having healed in some sort of way. So you can find your books at any bookstore, Amazon. I know that it's on Audible. And are there any other places where people can find you, find your information?
they can go to the website, which is jacoblieberman.org, O-R-G, and there are a lot of little videos and audios there that they might want to listen to and so on. Obviously, social media, YouTube, um, all kinds of places. And you'll know
They can
very,
find
yeah,
you.
they'll know very quickly whether it's speaking their language or not, you know?
Yes.
And yeah, it's people can email us through the website, and every email is responded to.
Beautiful. That is so wonderful to hear that it's not an AI generated
No,
response, that
no,
it's
no,
real
no,
human beings.
no. I am honored. I am deeply honored when someone takes the time to reach out because
Yeah.
maybe they enjoyed something they heard or read, or maybe they have a question that we can easily answer for them. So, yeah, it's a blessing,
Well,
and I
thank you
love it.
again.
Yeah.
Well, you are definitely on your path, as am I, and we hope that all of our listeners find their path. What sparks the life in them and makes that light shine. So, we would like to say thank you for everyone tuning in to our episode today at the DNA Talks podcast. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, especially if there's a certain topic that you'd like us to discuss. You can also listen to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast. You can even download our app, The DNA Way, where you can access the podcast, our webinars, the DNA Talks Digest, and all the information right in one spot, even your own DNA 360 reports. Or if you want to order them to find out more information about your DNA blueprint, you can do it right from the app. We also, if you want to learn more, add us to your list of like podcasts so you can get up to date for all of our new episodes. And speaking of up to date, please make sure to find us on Instagram at DNA Talks Podcast, as well as my own at DR Varden Official. Once again, thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciation, namaste, and we will see you at our next one. Take care,
Aloha.
everyone. Aloha.
Yeah.